The Mangarh Hill, located at the Rajasthan-Gujarat border. Year 1913, date 16th of November, time 8 p.m. The machine guns and cannons that sounded off from the Bhil Corps and other British forces did not stop until the early hours of 17th November, by when about 1,500 people belonging to the Bhil community were dead and 900 more had been arrested. The Bhil people who had gathered here on this hill had done so under the guidance of their spiritual leader, Guru Govind Giri, who had become the common foe of the British as well as the princely state rulers of Banswara, Sund, Idar and Dungarpur. This is in short the Mangarh Massacre, also regarded as the equivalent of the Jallianwala Bagh Massacre amongst the Adivasi community. In this video, I am going to debunk the 5 myths which the British as well as the native princely rulers used to malign Govind Giri and his movement. And in doing so, we're going to learn the real truth. Myth 1. Govind Giri was a self-styled king. Guru Govind Giri was actually a monk who had used his spiritual training to create 2 social reform movements, the Samp Sabha and the Bhagat movement, to lead his people out from a life of superstition, adultery and poverty. The Bhil people were already having a difficult time living their everyday lives, and this was made worse with the onset of the Chappanya Akal in 1899-1900. Deprived of basic means of living and livelihood, they had resorted to a life of loot, banditry and adultery. This put them in a vulnerable spot. They became vulnerable to the charms of the Christian missionaries, who found it very easy to convert them, and in doing so, proved to them that their salvation lay in embracing the British rule. To Govind Giri, this was a very sad and even more a dangerous state of affairs for his community. It appeared to him as if the entire Bhil community was on the verge of extinction, losing its identity. And so, he started to get people to awaken to their true rights, that they had a right to live a morally, ethically right life. And he did so using his spiritual teachings. Once people started following his teachings, the commandments that he had laid down, they started noticing drastic changes, improvements in their lives. They had become so much more happier, peaceful, and more productive. Another consequence of this, unfortunately, was that the tax revenue and the revenue that came from liquor started dipping. This scared off both the British as well as the native rulers. And this unification of the Bhils together gave them a scare that probably they were all uniting to establish a Bhil Raj, and in doing so, kick them out of their positions. Myth 2. Govind Giri had made a career out of being an incarnation of God. If Govind Giri had had spiritual entrepreneurialism on his mind, then he would have had a lot of wealth and would have been very happy living off the goodwill of the kings who were at first charmed by his charismatic personality and spiritual aura. But that was not the case. When he had returned after completing his spiritual training, all these kings of Banswara, Dungarpur, Idar, Sund, they had invited him to their courts to listen to his spiritual discourses and his bhajans, devotional singing. But the moment the scare of a Bhil Raj had entered their heads, they started dissuading his presence. They started denying him entry into their kingdoms. And not just him, even his followers. In fact, in January of 1913, the Maharaja of Dungarpur had Govind Giri arrested and jailed on false charges of cheating and deceiving peasants. However, fearing backlash from his followers, now numbering to around 5 lakhs, he was released in April of that same year. But since then, neither Govind Giri or any of his followers were welcome to live in any of the states of Banswara, Sund, Idar, Dungarpur, which traditionally had always been a stronghold of the Bhil community. Myth 3. The Bhils, under the guidance of Govind Giri, had assembled at Mangarh Hill to overthrow the princely rulers. Truth. As early as in 1903, Govind Giri had set up his principal dhuni or place of worship at the Mangarh Hill, and by April of 1913, when it had become abundantly clear that neither he nor any of his followers were welcome to live in their rightful lands, they all had moved to Mangarh Hill. Myth 4. Govind Giri was avoiding fight but was forced into fighting and then was defeated. Truth. The Bhils had about 33 grievances, which now they were able to quite unapologetically discuss because they were now not disturbed by anybody. They were all together at the Mangarh Hill. They were doing so through peaceful means, and they hoped that they could find a way to mediate with the rulers and the British. Unfortunately for Govind Giri, some of the more mischievous or the militant-minded members of his followers, had decided that the peaceful methods were not going to give them the kind of results that they were looking for, and so they had resorted to attacking a police station and raiding a village. This further strengthened the fear in the minds of the princely rulers that they were planning an offensive against them. However, that was not the case. Actually, in 1913, 16th of November was the auspicious day of Marg Sheersh Purnima, also known as Adivasi Jayanti. On this day, it is believed that any good deed done gets multiplied by 32 times. That is why Adivasi, in Hindi Adivasi means 32. So they were preparing for their great havan and prayers to be followed. And side by side, they were also sending out requests to the British political agent at Rewakantha and Mewar and requesting his intervention to get their grievances addressed. However, the political agents turned a deaf ear to their pleas and instead asked them to vacate the hill, saying that it was otherwise amounting to trying to stage a rebellion. The max that they said was that they would intervene and get them permission to practice their religion freely and move around in their native lands. But the Bhil grievances were much more deeper than that. So from between 6th of November to the 16th, there were constant toing and froing of warnings and requests that were exchanged between the political agents and Govind Giri and his followers. And this was a cause of concern for the princely rulers because what they wanted was immediate action. They wanted the British forces to immediately go and decimate the entire Bhil community that had assembled at Mangarh Hill. And the native rulers finally became successful in their instigation when at 8 p.m. the machine guns and cannons started sounding off. Now, in light of the modern weaponry that the British forces possessed, the Bhil community hardly had any weapons. They had their basic ammunitions, which was limited to just a bow and arrow. And so it was very obvious that they were going to be defeated. Myth 5. Govind Giri had turned into a ganja addict when in jail, became sick and then died. Truth. Govind Giri, who was arrested with hundreds of others on the 17th of November 1913, was taken to Ahmedabad, where after a court trial, he was sentenced to life imprisonment at the cellular jail Andamans. However, it was reduced to life imprisonment, which he began serving at the Hyderabad jail. Then, after 9 years, on grounds of good behavior, he was released. Upon released, he went ahead to settle down at Dahod in Gujarat and set up his hermitage. He did try to revive Samp Sabha and the Bhagat movement, and to a large extent he was successful as well, but it could not gather the steam that it had prior to 1913. Till his end, he continued serving the Bhil community through his Seva Mandal, and so much has been the reverence for his work that even today, descendants of the families who were with him on that Mangarh Hill fateful day still visit him. His dhuni in Dahod, Gujarat, offer their respects, and his follower count is still on the rise. The movement has not died out at all. So you see, this is how, by spreading myths, false informations, important contributions of several leaders have been maligned, diminished, and hidden. They have been suppressed from our knowledge. And so it is up to people like you and me to go back, dig into our history, question, and find out what the truth was. The entire Mangarh Massacre and its aftermath and the spirit of the Samp and Bhagat movement is captured in Govind Giri's well-known bhajan, O Bhure Diya, Nai Manu Re Main Nai Manu, which in English translates to, O white ruler, I will not obey you, I will not obey you. This bhajan is still sung today. If you found this video interesting, please do leave in a comment and let me know what exactly was so fascinating for you. It will motivate me to bring forth more hidden nuggets from our Indian freedom struggle. Thank you for watching. I'll see you soon. Till then, Jai Hind, Vande Mataram.